Hey everyone, I'm Clue. Right, time for another technical video. Did I get you? Right, it looked like I was wearing the armor. No? Oh well. But yeah, so we're going to go over the technical side, that is not F5, of my armor set effects. Now we'll probably split this into one, will be tackling the attribute system, right? Because attributes are a pretty interesting thing to work with in terms of tick lag, so they need a little bit more of an explanation. And then of course we have all the effects, right? So if you've put on a matching set of eye plating, which is just the eye trim, then you get a unique effect. So that's what we'll go over today, is how exactly I search, if you will, and activate those effects in the data pack, because this is the technical side. Now, in all honesty, I probably should have coordinated this a little bit better, right? Instead of just having them all in the one folder. Oh well, it's getting very large, right? 326 different functions. But the ones we are looking for are this tick armor set particles, armor set effects, and anything else? No, so the material bonus and then the armor trim attributes we'll go over in the next one. Okay, so we have particles and we have set effects. Basically, all I'm doing is searching the player and their inventory to see if they have certain armor equipped. So in this case, I look for slot 100, slots 101, 102, 103, all to see if they have the pattern archer. Okay, if they have that archer, then we're going to apply this particle effect to them. Granted, though, this archer one actually has a secondary check, right? It counts mobs within a certain range, and if there is, mobs you can shoot with a bow, it will apply the particle effect. So that's basically all I have to do for all the particle effects, is just look in the inventory to see if they have the correct trim on all 4 pieces of armor, and then apply a particle to them. Now, some do have timers on them. That's just essentially because even at 1 particle running every tick, it's way too many particles, right? It overloads the screen. So I've tried to make them not too intensive on the player visually. I think the only one I still am a little worried about is the silence particle effect, which is the witch particle. That one's quite extreme. I don't think I have it set to a timer. Silence, there it is. No, so it's not set to a timer. I might just halve it quickly. Where is one with a timer tick? Right, so all I have to do is stick this at the front of it. And then this allows me to set, how many, well, this essentially decreases the rate by a tenth, right? Because I'm using half a tick, so that's every 10 ticks it's going to run instead of once every 20 ticks. So 50% plus a bit. I can't do math. Anyway, we'll set this to 10, although I do think that impedes some of the other timers, 8, 9, that should be fine. Oh, I can't set it to 10 anyway. Right, because it only counts 10. Anyway, that is the particle side of things. Pretty simple, right? Again, just check the inventory using NBT. But yeah, so NBT is a bit inefficient. Because I'm only searching the player, it's not so bad. But usually I think you'd want to set some sort of prerequisite, so you could use @s, and that way it's only searching one player. So even if it's just execute as at all, and then execute as @s, or @s, as @s. Either way, it's not too bad, because it's a player. If you're doing this with entities, definitely set up some sort of buffer check. So use a different function to select, and then have another function with @s to actually select the NBT. Okay, on to the actual armor set effects. So essentially, it's the same thing, right? I'm searching the player's inventory to make sure they have the full matching set of armor. So in this case, they need coast in all 4 slots again. So 100, 101, 102, 103, right? That's head, shoulders, knees, and toes, basically. Okay, and then we just run our secondary function. So in this case, armor set effects coast. So if we go back to our pack, we should be able to scroll up, and it should be at A because they all are armor set effects, right? So we have Archer, Coast, Dune, Eye, essentially all of them. We'll open Coast, and this is where it gets helpful, right? So I'm using the @s trick. So I'm using this to check the NBT and select the player, and then I'm using the secondary function just to run off of that player. So in terms of coast, this is quite a long one, right? And essentially you can get as creative, as minimalistic as you'd like with these. Again, we've selected the entity off of what they're wearing. So outside of that, you just run everything as them. In terms of coast, we are just giving them luck and water breathing on a timer, so it's not just always refreshing and applying the potion effect. You could use infinity. The issue I have with infinity is it's essentially a toggle, meaning that if I put it on, I have to also write a way for it to come off, whereas with a timer, so in this case 3 seconds, if the player just unequips the gear, then they lose the effect after 3 seconds. Then we get into the more complex stuff. So for instance, I'm performing another inventory check with this one. Right, so I'm checking negative 106, which is the offhand slot. If they have sand in the offhand slot, then it's going to perform this series of functions, right? It's going to shoot sand in all the different directions. If I find the coastal armor, science title, I don't think it's on this side. Right, where are you? There we go. So head, chest, legs, and boots. We stick it on us. Actually, you know, we'll do F3 so we can check the leg. It should spike when it's first equipped, which is what we see, because that's when it actually passes the check. But it should die down, right, because it's performed the check. Now it's just giving us the effects. And then if we grab out some sand, normal sand, perfect, and we stick it in our offhand, it's going to trigger that secondary effect. So if we do F5, it should shoot out, perfect. Right, so it's launching sand in all the different directions every 5 seconds, I believe it was, and it's also deleting one sand from our offhand. It would also take from our inventory first if we had sand in our inventory, right, but it doesn't need to be in the offhand to actually clear the check. Okay, anything else in terms of coast? So we also have some effects for the actual sand. So when the sand hits someone, right, the sand is tagged with that blinding. So right here, tag, and then the motion. It then allows it to set off a particle effect on the entity it hits, as well as give them darkness and do damage using my own exhaust damage. Right, so fairly basic. Again, you can get as complex or creative as you'd like with these effects. Again, the big thing is just checking the NBT for the player to make sure they have that pattern. Now, this is sort of the best part of the armor trims, for me at least, right? So the trim mechanic, you can check for 3 different things. 4, actually, right? So you can check for, if I copy from the right spots, just double enter. So you can check for, obviously, trim pattern. You can then check for trim material. So you change this to material. If I could spell, there we go. And then you can do both of them, right? So trim material and, is that in the right spot? Yes, I believe so. Pattern, right? So make sure it matches that the pattern is trimmed with X material. It's not comma. Pattern, there we go. Got there in the end. Minecraft, blah, blah, blah. And then, of course, you can just check for any trim or any material, right? So you can just have this as open brackets. Open brackets? No. Empty brackets. There we go. Right. And this will just check to see if the player has trimmed gear on, which is really useful for doing a whole bunch of different things. Because again, this one piece of armor now has 4 functionalities to it, and you can check for it. You can have a basic effect, just if a player has trimmed gear. Then you can have specific effects if they have specific material and trim combinations, which I'm not doing. That'd be way too complex. I think there's 24 materials that I've added versus the, I want to say 10 or 11 actual trim patterns, right? So multiply them together. Very large number to come up with some unique effects, but you could, right? And then, of course, you can just check for the materials, which is what I do for the attributes, or the pattern, in this case, for the actual set effects. Okay, let's see. Is there any other creative ones to go over? I think Archer's. Archer's actually one of the more complex ones. Okay, so Archer is doing a few things. I don't want to... no, that one I did want to save. It's all right, I'll fix up the particle effect later. Okay, so this one is a little bit different, right? So we're checking our score, so mob count range. I've shown how to set up entity detection, right, in one of the other videos. Essentially, it just counts the entities within X distance. So in this case, I believe it's 8 to 16 blocks, right? So the sort of ideal range to use a bow for combat. And if there's one entity, it will tag our arrows with no gravity and then run this function. Essentially, in terms of the tag, all I'm doing is searching for arrows that leave the player and therefore don't have the left owner tag, right? So this is really important because it means that any arrows we shoot get tagged, but any arrows we get hit with don't. So this allows anyone with the archer armor to apply no gravity to their arrows, to apply piercing to their arrows, and to apply damage. Then again, just to keep it clean and sort of decrease the amount of TPS, I have more functions of these. It's really good to split up your functions as much as possible. I know it's tedious, but it is super helpful in cutting down tick lag, right? So these then tie into our armor set effects, archer no gravity, as well as damage and pierce, the 3 underneath, right? And then they just actually give the arrow its different effects. For instance, this one sets its damage to 5, right? Instead of, I think it's 2.5. I think it starts as as 0.5, and then you can get up to 2.5 with power, something like that. Either way, it's more damage, which is nice. Okay, then we also have Eye, Gladiator. Mage is the only one that I haven't really done, right, because I don't actually have Is Casting. I haven't set up the magic system. Gladiator is another one that checks the entities nearby, so it uses mob count again, right, this one, so mob count melee. So this one checks, I think the range is 0 to 8 blocks, right, so anyone nearby that you can do combat with. And then it does also apply attributes, so this just improves HP, armor, and damage, I believe, depending on the amount of mobs nearby. This one is probably the worst function that I have, right? I just got really lazy with it, and I should really split it up more. I should alter it a little bit, and I should probably not use the attributes. I should just use potion effects. But I like attributes and potion effects. There's lots of other armors or ways to gain potion effects, especially, like strength, resistance, and speed. Using attributes allows them to be more compatible, right? Rather than just overriding the different attributes. So yeah, by and large, that's basically all you gotta do, right? You're just looking again for, in this case, the pattern. You can look for the material if you want. You can look for specific slots. You could have, a special effect per piece of X trim. So for instance, rather than having it be a full set of Gladiator, I could make it, if they have any piece of Gladiator, then it does something. You could easily just get rid of the slot, right? Although, if you got rid of the slot, it'd just be in the inventory. It wouldn't be equipment. So you would actually have to run 4 different commands if you just want to check each slot independent of one another. But yeah, that is pretty much it for the set effects. Okay, you can probably just see glancingly, right? These are all for the attributes. We will have a lot more to discuss in the next one. Anyway, hope you enjoyed, hope it's helpful. See ya.